Hello. All right. So, 143. Yeah. Okay. Go slow. Make skillful cuts. Deep inside, imagine within you a door. The door is shaking and it is rocking on its hinges, and there is light and sand and wind pushing through this quaking door inside you. You've gone in the door before and mostly have decided to stay away from the door. Every time you've gone in, it felt overwhelming. It felt as though you were in the middle of a sandstorm. It felt like you had to squint your eyes. It felt like you got disoriented, and sometimes you found yourself in that door when you didn't want to go in it, and it took you a long time to get out, and it felt like the surface of a hazardous planet. And so you worked very hard to get back inside and stay inside. But now say you go into the door and you're wondering, what is going on in this door? What is this door? What is this place inside of me? Why is it here? What is it doing? Why is it so chaotic? What good could a room like this be? Yeah, maybe you never even considered there could be any good, and it was just so obviously bad that you deemed never to go in there again. But then, imagine that you go in the door. You're squinting your eyes, and it's crazy, and then you see the figure of a man standing in the midst of the sandstorm. The man lifts up his arms, relaxed, casually. He holds them out at his sides, effortlessly, without strain, without even any worry. In fact, he seems somewhat jovial. And the man was lifted up off the ground, and he began to move off, out, beyond where you could see. You were startled, so you still knew where the entrance to the room was, and so you backed out quickly, slammed the door behind you. Later, you decided to go in again, and the man was there again. This time, he looked at you in a way where you could tell he remembered you. You could tell that you saw what happened before. Looking at you in such a way that's wondering if you've made your decision. And instead of just putting his hands all the way out, he lifts them up just partially and stares at you like, will you lift your arms a little too? The whirlwind is still raging, and the sand still brushing against your skin, and your eyes are still squinted, but you're not focused on the storm anymore. You're so intrigued by this man and the look in his eyes and the way he moved. Last time you saw him, you lift your arms a little. And you could feel the wind rushing up underneath your arms. You could feel your body getting lighter and your connection to the ground becoming thinner. The man's still smiling at you, and you could tell that you were unified in purpose. He knew it too. He lifted his arms even higher. And so you matched him. Up from the ground you flew, and you found yourself hurling through the air. There was so much detail, you got distracted and you lost track of the man. And for a second it was so fun, but then it got overwhelming and you were moving too fast and you didn't know how to stop. And there was so much information, there was so much movement. And every grain of sand seemed like its own world that would expand endlessly. You squinted your eyes even tighter so that way you'd be less overwhelmed by the grains of sand. But you found yourself disoriented, and that you eventually shut your eyes completely and hit the ground. Your heart pounding, and the world still hazy and foggy, and your eyes still blurred from the sand. You're having trouble shaking the experience to be able to actually realize that you're on the other side of the door. You go about your life, and you go back into your usual routines. Usual patterns. But somehow it's all you can think about. As if that moment of flight was more real than anything you'd experienced before, and it made everything else that you chose to do and prioritize throughout your day seem partial, incomplete, vacant, oversimplified, gray. On a particularly sunny day, you saw the door glowing brightly, and it seemed like the weather was more fair, and you went in. It wasn't as stormy, it was still gusty, but you could see further in the horizon, and you could see beauty, and you could see sunrise and sunset, and you could marvel at the landscape inside of that door. You even began to hear birdsong. The man was there, and he put his arms behind his head, And he leaned back against the sweet, still wind. And he drifted off. Gentle, supported by the wind. As if falling was flying in all directions. As you toss and turn in your bed, not uncomfortable but snuggling, grabbing a pillow and pulling it up underneath your chest so you could stare at the beautiful landscape as you float through and through, staring at the beauty, and you find that you could wander into great and wonderful lands. You find inside the door there's just so many kingdoms and beauty, wonder. Staring at it all, you didn't even realize you fell asleep until you wake up outside the door again. Carrying on with your day. Your desire to go back in that door feels uncomfortable and uneasy, but also exciting and it actually begins to agitate you. And the agitation somehow seems connected to the door, and all of the details of your life seem to start swirling like the sand did on the stormy day. And you look, and the door itself is stormy, and now your life is stormy, and the door is stormy, and there's light and sand and wind and gust and even rain pushing through the door, as even the details of your life become just like those stinging grains of sand hitting your eyes. And now you're squinting, and you're losing track of the difference between the details of your life and the storminess inside that door. And it all seems to kind of blend and lay over top of each other, and you begin to see there's such connection that you don't even realize that you went back inside the door. And the man was there, still smiling, with his hair stuck across his face with a mixture of rain and sand. He lifts up his arms and flies upward like a bolt, without even realizing you lift your arms too, because you're chasing after his feet. You don't even consider the fact that you're going faster, higher than you ever had before, and you are bolting through the cloud and the rain and the sand, and it is pressing and streaking over your cheeks, and you don't even care about the feeling of frostbite and chapped skin as you are soaring after that man's feet, and you find yourself come up above the clouds. Into stillness, into light, into dawn. Looking down, you could see the storm swirling. But as you look at the smile on the man's face, as he takes back his position of his hands behind his head, like we did on the still day, grabbing a pillow and tucking it under your chest, you look down at the storm. You look over at the man, and it doesn't seem so bad from up here. There's so much beauty up here. You can see the storm passing and the air clearing. You see the man smile. For the first time, you heard him speak. Let's start from up here next time, he says. This is my testimony. And it's a really good way to approach life.